Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This stunning gentleman right here next to me, that's Tim. And this is Second Legacy, and thank you for stopping by. Today, we've got to take a trip down to Florida, my home state, and we've got to look at Ron DeSantis because he dropped some bombs on Biden and his propensity to basically usurp our rights through executive privilege. That is what we're going to talk about today, and I cannot wait to hear what you guys think about right there in the comments field. And of course, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notification bell on because this one, I think we need to spread out a little bit. We're going to say a quick word from our sponsor, and then we are going to dive right in. And the content today is brought to you by a sponsor, Ammo Squared. Now, this is such an interesting idea, guys. We're talking about retirement accounts for your ammo. It's a thing. This is something you guys definitely at least look at if you're interested.
So what's really cool about it is you can tell Ammo Squared what type of ammunition you want, and it'll automatically purchase that ammunition throughout the month. You can also sell the ammunition back if you don't want it, or you can just say, send it to me now, and they'll hold it for you. They'll store it for free, and they'll ship it to you whenever you request it. There's so many cool features about this service. You really need to check them out at ammosquared.com, and we want to thank them for sponsoring today's video.
All right, Tim, welcome to my home state of Florida. Get in here.
Oh, it's not your home state. It's your adopted state. Recently. Anyway.
It doesn't matter. I live here now, and I call it home is where the heart is.
That's
and my
true.
heart is here. So, So there you go. And in a special note, I would also like to say out there, Tim, that hum job is not an earworm. We determined off the record.
Well, if you ever listen to Mancow Muller in the mornings out of Chicago, never mind.
It's okay. It's okay, Tim. You're still a great man. I still love you. Still love you to death. But we're gonna have to make the records reflect that it was definitely an earworm, not a hum job. But anyway, let's keep going. If you guys saw the video yesterday, you know, but we've got to talk about Ronnie D, about the gun show loophole, Tim. You know how bad that is.
Yeah, I wish they would close that loophole. I don't like loopholes.
Oh,
they're like Irish pennants. They drive you nuts, you know?
Yep.
Everywhere there's a loophole.
The worst.
Tax loophole. I mean, it's just loophole after loophole.
Yep.
You know?
It's never ending loopholes. It's awful. But they closed it.
Okay.
So of course, we're making fun of, in a very dry manner, the ATF action through Biden that just basically made everyone a gun dealer and background checks across the board. DeSantis said some things that I want to run by you here, Tim, because I think these are some pretty important points, because he said some things that were very clear, and I really appreciate the communication that he laid out here. Let's hit number one. Let's get into this.
There is no gun. This is typical propaganda. If I have a gun store and you come in, you're required to run a background check. If I bring my inventory to a gun show, I still have to do the same thing as a FFL. There's no difference between a gun show and being in your store. And so that is something that really I think is a myth. Clearly, they don't have legislation. They need legislation if they're going to do anything. So it's another example of Biden just acting through executive fiat. He's going to get struck down finally when the whole pistol brace rule, that's unilateral. He does not have authority to do that.
Yeah. You know, look, so it's typical politician stuff. Yes, he's on our side, but the problem is he's mischaracterizing the situation just as the anti-gunners are. Right? They're both mischaracterizing the situation. So when he says, well, you know, a dealer has to go to a gun show and they still have to do background checks. Well, that's absolutely true. But what the anti-gunners are trying to stop are private sales. And we just got to meet that head on and talk about what they're actually trying to do, because you have a right to sell your private property in this country. Right? So they're talking about me going to well, I'm an FFL holder, but they're talking about you don't have an FFL, do you? Okay, so you're going to a gun show and you have that Mosin Nagant slung on your shoulder and you're looking to pick something else up. So you want to sell your Mosin Nagant for a couple $100, and that is perfectly legal, right? And it has been the entire time we've been a nation. But this is what they're trying to stop. They don't want me giving a firearm to my child for, a Christmas present, their first .22 rifle. They don't want me giving presents to family members or things like that. They don't want me transferring or selling a firearm to a friend. They don't want us doing any of that because they're trying to stop our ability to freely engage in Second Amendment activity, which is a protected right. So this whole, and I don't agree with the NICS system. I don't agree with any of that stuff. This whole background thing, you know, when they implemented this during, it was the Clinton administration, when they implemented the NICS system, the promise was it was going to stop crime or bring it down to a manageable level, but it didn't change anything. If you look at the statistics, the crime was already on a downward trend before they even did that. And so it hasn't really changed the outcome in any way that we can measure. The NICS system doesn't stop criminals from getting guns. Criminals acquire them through illicit means. They'll steal them or something else, right? They're not going into a gun store doing a background check. They don't want that heat. So
correct. It doesn't make sense that they would. It just doesn't make sense.
Right. So I get a little tweaked at these politicians when both sides in this argument with DeSantis, they're both misrepresenting the conversation, right? So.
Well, I think that he's speaking in generalities. I think he's addressing the overall myth of the gun show loophole.
It is a myth.
That's the important.
But he's talking about the FFL.
It's 100% a myth.
Yeah, but he's talking about the FFL.
He is talking about a different entity completely.
But what he needs to come out and say,
I think that's important,
is you have a right to sell your private property, right? I shouldn't be forced. If I want to sell you a rifle, say you want to go deer hunting and you don't have a deer rifle, I sell you a deer rifle I have because I want a different one. Well, should I now be forced to go find an FFL somewhere, assuming we live in the same state, right? Because that's federal law.
Well, of course.
And so, well, not on a long gun. Take that back. So if it was a handgun, it'd be different. Federal law, convoluted a bit. But then we're forced to go to an FFL dealer, pay an FFL dealer to run a background check on you to buy the firearm. And so now they're just adding an extra layer of harassment that is not really doing anything to reduce crime. Violent criminals are still doing violent criminal things. What they're doing is harassing legitimate law-abiding gun owners, and they're trying to put so much pressure on us to make things so convoluted, so difficult, so time-consuming to even shame you, so you opt out of exercising your rights. That's the end goal with the anti-gunners and all of this. So anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I think you nailed it.
Tim rant.
I think you did a Tim rant, but it's okay. I love a good Tim rant because those always lead to great things. But I mean, nothing you said in there was insanely off the radar and a reservation insane. It is private property. They are trying to control you through the system that they want control in. It's about putting you inside of a system so they know every single thing universally.
Bingo.
That's what this is about. I mean, it's a universal push. That's what it really is.
It's a baby step towards registration and all the other stuff that goes along with it. They want to know everybody that's buying something. They want records of everybody buying something so that at some point in the future, when they get their way, they'll know who has what so they can come take it. And that's all this is about.
It's incrementally building a gun control Frankenstein.
Yes.
And basically they want the entire frame in place. So when they put the battery in, it's all ready. That's exactly right. But we're going to stop them, Tim. We're going to stop them. I hope. I think we can.
We can.
I want
It's going to take all of us pulling in the same direction.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. But that is what they're doing. So let's go to clip number 2. Let's see what this is about.
I think that this is an example of, who governs our society. We have a constitutional system that was enacted at this country shortly after this country's founding. And it's very clear on who has the power to legislate, who is charged with executing those laws. What Biden is doing, and he's not the first president to do it, but what he's doing is he's taken the bureaucracy and this fourth branch of government, and he's using that to legislate without popular consent. And that's wrong. That is not the way we're supposed to be governed. And in this instance, it's obviously on a false premise because people that have gone to gun shows know when you buy a fight, you do go through background checks. They can't they're not exempt from it just because they happen to be at a gun show. And that's been the law for a long, long time. But it's a symptom of a larger problem of governing by executive fiat, doing these executive orders through the bureaucracy when you can't get this done through Congress.
And that's something we've been saying all along.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, there he's spot on, right? He's saying that, these politicians, and as he said, Biden isn't the first, they're legislating with executive fiat, which means they don't really have the power, but they're just kind of forcing their way into the conversation, doing what they want and hoping that they can slip it by the courts. And they keep doing this. And why do they do it? Because they can't get it done legislatively. Right? They're not winning in the courts. They're not winning in the legislature. So now they have to show their constituents they're doing something to violate our rights. They have to take this step, which is questionable, which will more than likely wind up before the Supreme Court, definitely a district court, maybe even the Supreme Court. And it's probably going to get struck down again. But this is to our benefit and to our detriment, right? We're constantly fighting for our rights, which is the detriment. But the benefit is the anti-gunners, we've talked about several times in this program, the anti-gunners keep throwing all this stuff at the wall in rapid succession. They keep getting struck down. They're quickly moving themselves into a corner they can't get out of. They're not going to have any more options. Absolutely. They're getting door after door shut in their face in the courts.
Absolutely. That's exactly what's happening. And, to this point, and this is one of the reasons that I have this clip in here, we're doing this episode, is because that middle portion right there, the single problem, in my opinion, you can disagree, of course. It's a two-way conversation, Tim.
Don't tell me what I can do.
I will tell you what you can. I'm just kidding. So the biggest thing that I think that we have in our country that is a glaring problem is the executive bureaucratic apparatus that is governing our country through executive fiat under control of the executive branch. So here's where this kind of ties into something else that we've talked about a lot. If this Chevron deference thing happens and the ruling comes down that we're expecting in June, because the hearing's already taken place at the Supreme Court, if that comes down and they say, yeah, Chevron deference is wiped out, you talk about a sea change. Everything that they've done over the last 30 years has been through the executive levers of power. Mostly. There's, of course, legislation through Congress, but a lot of it has been done through the growing bureaucratic state, because that's how congressional members and critters basically avoid scrutiny for their decisions. So you pull that thing out by the root, man, you're going to see some things, Tim.
Yeah. I don't know. I hope they make the right decision, but even if they do, it's kind of like previous decisions where they kind of sort of decide in our favor, but there's some waffling in the decision. So it's just like, well, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment, definitely protects an individual's right to own a firearm, but we can apply reasonable restrictions. Well, thanks. There's nothing ambiguous about that. What's reasonable? Right? I mean, that's what courts are supposed to resolve, is ambiguity, not introduce new ambiguities. But this court has done that in the past, right?
Well, it has consistently for multiple years.
Like and the Chief Justice, I think, is the driver behind a lot of this, because he's very much a fence setter, right? He can vote with the left and he can vote with the right. But even when he votes with the right, when he writes his opinion, he kind of drifts back to the center and maybe towards the left a little bit. So Roberts isn't the great justice that he's been called by some. He's, in my mind, he's like a politician. You can't trust
a little
him.
bit. I mean, I can see what you're saying. If you look back to the Bruen decision around that same topic, the Bruen decision was such a powerful decision. And then Kavanaugh started writing, and it was all about states can have a reasonable reason to do some sort of licensing scheme. And that basically opened the door to a lot of manipulation and abuse by the blue leftist states. That's what they used for sensitive.
Wasn't it Alito?
That was the entire link.
Wasn't Alito or somebody that wrote a similar opinion in Heller, where
I don't remember who did it in Heller.
Yeah, but they did the same thing in Heller, where they said, well, you can have reasonable restrictions. We just introduced ambiguity into the conversation. You're supposed to resolve this, not add more.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what though? I'm an optimistic guy. I like optimism. I'm gonna say it. Movement in the right direction is really tasty movement in the right direction. We tend to, on the gun side, the gunfight, we tend to do these things where if we didn't do a fell swoop headshot that we lost, it's like, well, not really. We got a few body shots in there, and their battle efficiency is down to like 60% on that one.
Well, there's no decisive battle in this war that's been going on my entire life.
No,
predates
never
me.
Will be.
No, yeah, it's just like the courts aren't going to give us the decisive decision that we all hope and pray for. They just don't, and politicians don't do what they promise, and it's just like everybody falls short of expectations, in my opinion. That's why I hate politicians, and I'm not a real big fan of the court system, because I see corruption in both. But whatever.
What do you like, Tim? What do you like?
Puppies and ice cream.
I was thinking you were going to say puppies, and ice cream's a fine choice, and firearms. Come on now.
Ice cream puppies.
You like the pew-pews.
Well, Ron, thank you for fighting the good fight down there in Florida. If you guys have any commentary about gun shows and loopholes, let us know what you think down below. Do you think there's really a loophole there? Do you think you should be able to sell your private property? Or does every single thing you do need to subject you to a background check? Thank you for watching Second Legacy, and we'll talk to you guys soon.